Unmute. Okay. I hope. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Wait. Okay. So we are here to discuss the definition, amendment, and the definition of business combinations. If anyone has any doubt at any point of time, what you can do is you may just send the message on chat. I'm just opening the chat box in my mobile so that I can access whenever you have any doubt or you need to ask anything related to the same. Okay. So what exactly was the amendment and why there was a need for amendment in business combinations? We'll see it through with the help of the examples that are given. Just a minute. Okay, so your face is not visible. Just a minute. Okay, okay. Okay. So what exactly is the business combination? What exactly does it talk about? Just works fine. Okay, okay. So what exactly does it talks about? Earlier, business combination told about the definition that when you are purchasing an entity or maybe a part of the entity, let's say you are purchasing a segment, you're trying to purchase a segment, a part of the business of any entity, like maybe a separate business operations. It could be like there is a restaurant chain which has 5 different restaurants and you're trying to buy one particular restaurant out of it. So you are buying integrated set of activities related to that restaurant. Then we consider that you are buying a business and it has to be governed by two standards. Initially, Indian Accounting Standard 103 business combinations and subsequently by Indian Accounting Standard 110 consolidation. Okay. So whenever you acquire control of any business, it could be a separate entity that you have acquired or a part of the entity which constitutes a separate business in itself, then we apply this particular standard. So this standard basically first defines what is business, because if it does not satisfy the definition of business, if it does not satisfy the definition of business, then it will not be like what you are acquiring will not be governed by Indian Accounting Standard 103. It will be governed by various other standards like Indian Accounting Standard 2. Okay, inventory, Indian Accounting Standard 16, property, plant and equipment, 38, intangible assets, 40, investment property. So the first thing is it should be defined to be a business. It should fall within the definition of this business. Then it will be governed by the standard 103. If it will not fall within the definition of business, then it will be governed by other asset-based standards like 2, 16, 38, and 40. Okay. So what is business? Business is integrated set of activities capable of being conducted and managed for the purpose of either providing goods. This was what earlier the definition was. So they've amended it further. They included service to customers and they also included investment incomes. What was happening is there are various venture capitalist funds, there are various angel investor funds, there are various financial corporations which acquire other financial corporation, and financial corporation doesn't provide goods or service. They provide you with investment income in the form of dividends, in the form of interest. So they said that yes, if you are acquiring any such financial corporation, then also it will fall within the definition of business. Okay, so this was the first amendment that was brought in. Earlier it was only goods. They made it more precise to include even services and cash generating incomes, cash generating investment incomes like maybe dividend or interest. Okay, anyone having any query till this point, you may send me the message on the chat. Okay. A business consists of input, process applied to those inputs have the ability to contribute to create output. Let's understand what is business. It says that in business is something which has input, which has process, which has output. Output may exist or output may not exist. Output is not compulsory. Output is not compulsory, but a business is something which should have input and which should have process. And they both together either produce output or they are capable of producing output. Okay, so there is input, there is process. Input when applied to, process when applied to these inputs. These inputs have the capability of being converted into output by applying these particular processes. So either they are actually giving output or they have the capability of giving output. Either case, we'll consider it to be business. So output is not compulsory, but there should be a capability of producing output. Then we'll consider it business. Otherwise, think if there is no process, if there is no output, there is just input like machinery is there, raw material is available. So you're not purchasing a business, right? You are purchasing the machine, you are purchasing those raw material, there may be land, there may be building, you are purchasing those assets. It is like something, a bulk group of assets being purchased in slump sale, right? So they should not be governed by this standard 103, they should be governed by other standards like 2, 16, 38, 40. That is what I told you. Okay, so that is why there should be process. A process is necessary. What you buy in a business is not input, what you buy in a business is not output. What basically you purchase in a business is process. For example, if I'm purchasing a running restaurant, I am not purchasing the table over there, the cutlery over there, I am not purchasing the raw material and other things that they have. I am purchasing two things basically: the output for which they have the customer base, and the staff over there which is trained, the brand that has been developed, and people know that this particular restaurant provides a particular taste of food. So why example of restaurant? Because that is something that we see in our daily routine life. Okay, so we know that in a particular restaurant, the kind of service that we are going to get, the process of that particular restaurant is defined, right? So what I am purchasing is basically that process. We are not purchasing input, we are not purchasing output. Obviously, we are paying for input and output as well. But when I say that I'm purchasing a business, I am purchasing the process. I'm not purchasing its input or maybe the output. Okay. Anyone having any query, you may send me the same on the chat box. So what exactly do we mean by input? Input means everything. It includes machinery. Machinery is the input for converting inventory into output, raw material. It also talks about employees. Employees are also input because with, see, direct labor, direct material, direct expenses, all of them constitute input. And then there is a conversion process. That conversion process is basically the next step. So the first step is input. Input is I have the right to produce a particular thing, intellectual property, which includes intangible assets as well. I have tangible assets, machinery for to be converted into output, which will help in converting into output, raw material, and I have the employees who are capable of converting this input into output using the machine and converting the raw material into final product. So they are all considered to be input. Okay. Process means there is a standard, there is a protocol, there is a system, convention, everything that is well prepared, that is well defined, and on the basis of that, which will be applied to those input. We talked about the input. We now have a system, protocol, set of ideas, procedures on which the employees are trained. So if the employees are trained, we call them organized workforce. We call them organized workforce. So if we apply it on the input, it gives an output. So these are not amendment. These were there in the basic definition as well. I'm trying to explain what do I mean by business. And then there is output, the final product that we are selling in the ordinary course of business. It also now includes, as per the amendment, investment income, services. Services and investment income are also considered as output. Now, how do we define whether it's a business or not? Okay. The first step is concentration test. This is the first step. I'll come back to the earlier two slides and I'll share these slides as well with you all. With the help of CA Club India, they'll definitely reach all of you. The PowerPoints are free for access. Let's first try to understand what is concentration test. This is the first test. They say that if this particular test is passed, it is not a business. It is not a business. It will not be governed by Indian Accounting Standard 103. Okay, if this particular test is passed, it is not a business and it will not be governed by this particular standard. Remember this first point. Okay. So what is concentration test? Concentration test is something is met if substantially all of the fair value of what I have paid for the business, all of whatever I have paid in the business is basically for a particular asset. That particular asset is identified single asset, single identifiable asset, or it is set of similar identifiable assets having similar risk and rewards. Single identified asset means I just have one asset. Similar means those assets which have similar risk and rewards. Okay, they don't have different risk or reward, they have similar risk or reward. So what I have paid is for basically a single asset. Let's try to understand this. Okay, so what do I mean by, how do I determine these values and what exactly does this mean? It means that suppose that I am purchasing a company A Limited, and A Limited has a land which is worth 100 crore fair value, not carrying amount, fair value, worth 100 crore, and there are some other assets which are worth 1 crore. So if I pay 101 crore to purchase A Limited, if I pay 101 crore to purchase A Limited, what I'm majorly paying for is this land. Land constitutes 100 crore out of 101 crore of consideration that I have paid to purchase A Limited. So according to you, what I see on the face of the paper is that I am purchasing A Limited. I am purchasing an entity. But actually, if you see, substantially what I'm paying for is land. It is not for A Limited, substance over form. I'm paying for A Limited, and I'm paying for land, and land constitutes 100 crore out of 101 crore that I've paid. So what I've paid is substantially for land. Now, how much percentage is substantial is not defined by the standard. Standard says you have to define it. So generally it is 90% or more. Generally, standard is not saying this. Okay, it is just a general parlance. By general view, we always say that if 90% or more is being paid for a single identified asset like land, okay, then what we are paying for is land, and this is not a business. This is not a business. This A Limited, purchase of A Limited should be governed by Indian accounting standard maybe 16, property, plant and equipment, or Indian accounting standard 40, investment property. Either of them, either of them. So this, because I have paid for a single identified asset. So what do we mean by similar identifiable assets? We'll be coming for those examples in coming slides. So just wait for similar identifiable assets. I'll come down to that as well. I'll give you examples. There are lots of examples in the slides. Okay. So let's try to cover this part a bit. Concentration test. How do we determine this value, fair value of the gross assets? This is step one. This is step one that we need to identify. Then we need to identify other steps. Okay. So they have defined these steps over here. Let's see the steps. Then we'll come back to similar identifiable assets and what are single identifiable assets. Okay. Let's try to understand concentration test. This is the first test. If this is not passed, then we will go for further tests. Then there is whether it is output exists or the output does not exist. That part we are going to see later. First step, is this identify, like does it pass concentration test or does it fail concentration test? Okay. So let's see. So first step is measure the fair value of the gross assets. And how do we measure that fair value of the gross assets? We measure the fair value of the gross assets by whatever consideration that we have transferred for the purchase of some percentage, whatever percentage we have purchased of the entity. Let's say you have purchased 100% of the shares. For control, you may even purchase 60% of the shares. Okay, 60% of the shares. So what is the consideration that you have paid to purchase these shares? Plus, if you have purchased 60%, the remaining 40% are with other shareholders who don't have control. You have 60% shares, you are having control. Other 40% are held by other shareholders who don't have control. We call them non-controlling interest. So fair value of those non-controlling interest, what is their fair value? Okay. This, how do we measure this, is governed by Indian Accounting Standard 103 that tells you it is very simple. We know the share price. We know the share price of the company in the market. Based on that, how many shares are held by these non-controlling interests, we just need to multiply them. Okay. If we already had some shares earlier with us, the fair value of those shares are also to be considered. The fair value of those shares are also to be considered. Okay. So let's try to understand with the help of a very small example. Let's say there is an entity which has some single identifiable asset of 100 crore and there are other assets of 10 crore. Okay. This entity is for 110 crore. There are some liabilities in this entity which are amounts to 30 crore rupees. Okay. So let's say this is the fair value. Let's assume this is the fair value. So what I will pay to buy this entity, what I will pay to buy this entity A Limited will be 100 plus 10, 110 minus liability, because that is what I have to pay. I'll have to bear it from my pocket. Liability, I have to pay out the liabilities from my pocket. So minus liability, 110 minus 30. What I will pay for this entity is 80 crore rupees, right? 80 crore rupees. Now, what is the gross value of the assets? Gross value of the assets. The first point that we have seen till now is this 80 crore. But let me go down to the point number 2, point number 3 as well. What is written over there? It says that suppose there was no liability. Suppose there was no liability, no such liability of 30 crore. Then how much you had paid to purchase this entity? How much amount will you pay to purchase this entity? That makes it 110 crores, right? That makes it 110 crores. I hope it is clear. So 110 crore if there is no liability. Because there is liability, we will say okay, so 110 crore if you want to purchase this entity without liability, what you will pay is 110 crore. So what I would say is, even if there is a liability, I have somewhat purchased this entity for 110 crore. Somewhat. How can I say that? I have paid 80 crore rupees to purchase the entity, and in future I will settle this liability by paying 30 crore. I'll have to pay this 30 as well. So somewhat to purchase these gross assets, somewhat to purchase these single identified asset and other assets, I have paid 110 crore, 80 crore to the shareholders and 30 crore to the liability holders, right? Because if the entity closes down, the liability holder will have the first right over these assets, right? I hope you're able to understand. Wait a minute. Okay. So over here, somewhat somewhere, 80 crore and 30 crore, I would be paying 110 crore to purchase this asset. So what it says is gross value of the assets is 110. Purchase consideration plus liabilities. Purchase consideration plus liabilities. I hope it is clear. Purchase consideration plus liabilities. Anyone having any doubt, you may just leave it on the chat box. Okay. Moving ahead. Just a minute. Okay. So another point that the standard was talking about is, suppose you have purchased only 70% of the shares. You have not purchased all the shares, you have just purchased 70% of the shares. So what you will be paying for this 70% will be roughly 56 crore rupees. I am considering 70% of 80 crore, 70% of 80 crore, right? What I'll be paying is 56 crore rupees. Standard says that to determine the gross value of the assets, I am paying 56 crore and also consider the fair value of non-controlling interest, the remaining 30% shareholders, which makes it 24 crores, right? That makes it 24 crore. Together it constitutes 80 crore rupees. That is what we have read over here, including fair value of non-controlling interest. What is this fair value of previously held interest? Suppose I am purchasing 60% shares right now and 10% were already held. 10% were already held by me. So those 10% have a fair value of 8 crore, right? 10% have a fair value of 8 crore. What I have paid for 60% right now is 48 crore, right? 48 crore, and non-controlling interest has a fair value of 24 crores. So what the standard is saying is, in our example, fair value of consideration transferred, what I have paid 48 crore, fair value of non-controlling interest 24 crore, fair value of previously held interest 8 crore. Okay, 8 crore. So together they constitute the first point. Second point, fair value of liability assumed is to be added. Fair value of the liability assumed is to be added. Okay, so fair value of the liability assumed 30 crore rupees, this will be added. Okay, now the standard says, suppose there is some cash and cash equivalent kept over here. Suppose there is some cash or cash equivalent. Let's say 2 crore of cash and cash equivalent exists over there. Okay, so when you are paying something to acquire control of any entity, when you pay something to acquire the control of the entity, okay, why is it showing the screen again and again? Is it that I am receiving the messages and I am not able to see them, something like that? No. Okay. Okay, coming back. So we have this 84824, what I told you. Suppose there is cash and cash equivalent 2 crore. Think of it like this, that I have a company, this A Limited, I am the owner of the company, and you want to buy this company. Basically, you are interested in the land or the business of the company. Now the company has a bank account in the name of A Limited. I am the owner of the company. Okay, I am the director of the company. I have 100% shares. And the company has a bank account where 2 crore rupees is balance kept over there. So when you come and purchase this entity, what I'll tell you is pay me this 2 crore rupees extra. Pay me the 2 crore rupees extra. Why will I ask for that 2 crore extra? Because it is kept in the bank account. I will withdraw those 2 crore, take them along with me. You will have to use the same bank account. So why don't you yourself pay me 2 crore rupees extra? So ultimately, when you are buying the company, you are paying 80 crore plus 2 crore. But what you have bought, what you have purchased is basically 80 crore worth of business or 80 crore worth of assets. Single individual identified asset, other assets minus liability. Why you have paid 2 crore extra for that cash and cash equivalent balance? Okay. So it says you should reduce those cash and cash equivalent. Then it talks about deferred taxes. Deferred taxes are not considered to be assets. That is why it says that ignore deferred taxes completely. Ignore deferred taxes completely. So what basically the formula says is you have to the purchase consideration that you have paid plus fair value of non-controlling interest plus shares already held plus liabilities minus cash and cash equivalent. This gives you gross assets, the value of the gross asset that you have purchased. In our example, the gross value of the asset purchase is 110 crore. 110 crore. I hope it is clear. Let's try to see another example related to the same. Here they have said entity A holds 20% interest in B. So you already having 20% shares. You already have 20% shares. Subsequently, you acquire further 50% shares. So 20 were already there. You have purchased further 50, making it total 70 crore. You have paid 300 crore for the same. You have paid 300 crore for the same. Okay. So earlier what we have paid right now is 300 crore. It says fair value of the assets acquired is building 1000 crore, cash and cash equivalent 200 crore, financial liability 800 crore, deferred tax liability 150 crore. We are assuming DTL is not included in this financial liability. It's a separate liability. Fair value of this entity is 400 crore. This is of the entity, not of the assets. Okay. Fair value of NCI is 120. Fair value of non-controlling interest is 120. So let's consider it over here. The fair value of non-controlling interest is 120 crore, right? What about the 20% shares already held? 20% shares already held. It says fair value of those 20% shares already held is 80 crore. How are they identifying these 80 and 120? The 80 and 120 according to them comes from this fair value of the entity, which is 400 crore, which is obvious. If the overall entity fair value is 400 crore, what you are getting is what NCI has rights is 30% and the shares already held by us were 20%. So 20% of 400, that makes it 80. That makes it 80. But to acquire these assets, basically just building, right? Basically just building, which is 1000 crore. We also have to pay off in future these liabilities of 800 crore, right? We'll have to pay off these liabilities of 800 crore as well. So plus liabilities assumed, 800 minus, but to pay these liabilities, already we have 200 of cash available with us, right? 200 of cash is already available with us. So minus 200 cash and cash equivalent. Don't consider deferred tax liabilities. We'll not consider deferred tax liability as actual liability because it is not the liability that we have to pay immediately. It is something that is just a calculation as per Indian Accounting Standard 12. Okay. Indian Accounting Standard 12. So it is 300 plus 120 plus 80 plus 800 minus 200, making it 1100. So ultimately, the fair value of the gross assets that the entity has, is 1100 crore. That is what we have paid, right? 1100 crore. And one of the single identified asset has a fair value of 1000 crore, building 1000 crore. So I can say that I have paid 1100 crore, out of it 1000 has been paid specifically for this building, which is forms substantial part of what we have paid. Substantial part of what we have paid, which means this is not a business. We are basically trying to purchase a building. So how did we determine that what we have paid? What is the purchase consideration paid for equity plus the liabilities that we have assumed that ultimately we are going to settle 800. minus the cash that is available to settle these liabilities. Cash that is available to settle these liabilities will reduce that. Okay. Anyone having any query till this particular point? Anyone having any query till this particular point? Okay. So this was concentration test. Concentration test tells you about two things: single identifiable assets and similar identified assets. Okay. Just now joined. You may just repeat the video earlier. You've joined right now. You have just missed the concentration test. You may just repeat the video. You may see the recording again. Okay. Because revising the whole thing again, it will consume a lot of time. We have a lot to discuss right now. Lot is left. Okay. I hope it is clear till this point, those who were there till now. So now we have this single identifiable assets or similar identifiable assets. Single identifiable asset means we are buying one asset. But suppose this asset is not detachable, it is from another asset. There are two assets which are joined together and it will cost substantially to detach them. Land and building is one of the examples. Okay, land and building is one of the examples. Or maybe you have this machine, particular machine that is attached to the land. Okay, to remove that, we'll have to dismantle it and it will cost substantially. Then this land and this attached asset together constitute a single identifiable asset. Okay. The assets having similar risk and rewards are considered to be similar identifiable asset. We have an example related to similar identifiable assets. You will need to check out example 2. Example 2. Now, entity purchases a portfolio of 10 single family homes, 10 single family homes that each have in place lease. These houses are leased out. These houses are leased out. The fair value of consideration paid is equal to the aggregate fair value of these 10 homes. So we have now this entity named, let's say, A Limited. We have this entity named A Limited, and A Limited has 10 single identified homes. Okay. And they are leased out. They are leased out. So we can say they have a business of leasing and we are trying to buy A Limited. We are trying to buy A Limited. Okay. So it says that since you have the fair value of these 10 identified homes, what we have paid is equivalent to these 10 identified homes. Let's say you have paid 200 crore and 200 crore is equivalent to the value of these 10 single identified houses. So we have 10 different assets. These are not single identified assets. You cannot consider all 10 houses as single asset, right? There are 10 different houses. It's like row houses, having 10 row houses, right? But what the standard says is each home has a different floor interior design. All of them have different designs. They are located in same area. They are located in same area. Let's say Dadar in Mumbai, a particular area in Dadar in Mumbai. Okay. They have same class of customers, similar type of tenants, which are similar. Risk of operating in real estate market are not significantly different, which means they have similar type of risks. They have similar type of risks. I hope it is clear. You are able to understand what I am trying to say. So all of them, this similar type of risk and everything, if we see this complete thing, we can say they are not single identified asset, but they are similar identifiable asset because they have similar risk and rewards. They have similar risk or rewards. So we will consider them as a single asset while determining whether it is business or not. So for concentration test, they will be considered as a single asset for concentration test. So for concentration test, we see two types of asset. Either it should be a single asset or it should be similar types of assets, similar identifiable assets. So these are similar identifiable asset, 10 same types of houses having similar risk or rewards. Okay. I hope it is clear. So these 10 together constitute a single asset, and we can see that we have paid amount equivalent to fair value of these 10 assets, right? So what we are basically purchasing are these 10 houses. We are basically purchasing these 10 houses. So this is not a business. This is not a business. It passes the concentration test. Okay. It passes the concentration test. Well, example 3, if you see, example 3, it says you have the same 10 single houses, same as earlier, same as example 2. Basically, this is same as example 2. Okay. Except that you also have one corporate office having multiple tenants, one corporate building with multiple tenants, park with 6 10-story buildings, corporate offices. There are 10 buildings in it, 10 buildings. Okay. 10-story building. No, sorry. There are 6 10-story buildings. There are 6 buildings, each having 10 floors. They are fully leased out. They are fully leased out. Okay. Now, it is very logical that there's a corporate office and there are 10 family houses, right? Family houses may have similar risk or reward, but corporate office cannot have same risk or reward as the houses, right? So now we have similar identifiable asset 1, which are those homes, and then we have similar identifiable asset 2, which is this corporate office, but they together don't constitute similar identifiable asset. Okay, so we don't have just one single identified asset, we don't just have one similar identifiable asset, we have two similar identifiable assets. Okay, now it says fair value of the office is similar to fair value of the 10 single family homes. 10 single family homes, so they have similar fair values, okay. So now we can say if this has a fair value of 200 crore, even this corporate office has a fair value of 200 crore. So I can say that if I'm paying 400 crore, I'm not paying substantially for a single identified asset or similar identifiable asset. I'm not paying for just one similar identifiable asset, set of one similar identifiable assets or a single identifiable asset. I'm paying for two similar identifiable assets, right? So that does not satisfy the concentration test. For concentration test, we are paying almost substantially, like maybe 90% or more, for a single identifiable asset or a single set of similar identifiable assets. I hope it is clear. You're able to understand this. Okay. So this does not satisfy the concentration test. So what happens if we don't satisfy the concentration test? Concentration test was a basic test. Standard basically wanted to tell you that let's first look at a very initial stage in a very simple method to say whether that is not a business. Once it is identified that it is not a business, story ends over here itself. But if it does not satisfy concentration test, now we need to check a detailed test. And those detailed tests are whether output exists or whether the output does not exist. Then what we are purchasing, the entity we are purchasing has output or it does not have output. Okay. So now we have to check two parts. So what does it say when it has output? It says that if has output, check one of the 2 points. It should have at least one of the 2 points. Either you have output with organized workforce, that means your workforce is trained, okay, they have the necessary skill, knowledge, experience, and they have the ability to convert the inputs acquired, the inputs that you have, into output, and this process is critical. This is not a very easy process that can easily be adopted in the market by any Tom, Dick, or Harry. Okay, this is a critical process. So if anyone wants to change this process, if anyone purchases your entity and he has the workforce and he wants to change this process, it will either cost substantially, the last point, or it will take his lots of efforts, or it will take lot of time to continue. So either you'll have to put in lots of efforts to change the methodology in which the work is going on, or maybe you'll have to incur huge cost to change this process, or maybe it will take a lot of time for the process to change over the period. Okay, so either it's a manual machine business that you are going to convert into automated process, so it will cost substantially. Right? If it is something that will need a change in workforce, slowly or steadily we need to train our workforce into a new methodology, so it will take time, delay. Okay, or maybe efforts where you will have to change the mindset of the people of how they were working. Okay, so if the inputs and the existing process is critical, so when it is critical, if to change it, it will cost substantially, or it will take a lot of time, or it will take a lot of efforts. Okay, if any of the 3 point exists, then the process is critical. So we have organized workforce, we have input, and this input conversion process is critical. This input conversion process by organized workforce is critical. Okay, so we have input, we have output, and the process is critical. It cannot be easily adopted in the market, easily, readily available in the market. No, it is not a process like that. Or significantly contributes to the ability to continue producing output. Okay, significantly contribute. This process basically contributes a lot so that the output can be processed continuously and the process is unique. You have intellectual property related to the same, or maybe patent or royalty, trademark, and it is scarce. It is not easily available. What it says is there in first point itself. Why it is saying in first point itself? You may be having input, you may be having output, so there is no issue. You have input and output, input and organized workforce. Let's say I don't have organized workforce. but I have a patent which is scarce, not easily available in the market. And we are producing output based on that patent. We don't have organized workforce. We have unskilled labor, but our process is scarce in the market. We are still purchasing business. What it says is we are still purchasing business. We have organized workforce, but we don't have input. Input is readily available in the market. Input is not something that is critical. Okay. But this process, this organized workforce, and the idea on which the work is going on is very unique. It is very scarce. It is very unique. It is very scarce. So that is then also we'll constitute it as a business. So either you have both input and organized workforce. Okay, the process is critical. If any one of them is missing, at least your process should be scarce. Your process should be unique. Okay, your process should be unique. Your identified idea should be scarce. Then we will consider that it is a business. Otherwise, it is not a business. Otherwise, it is not a business. So either you need input plus organized workforce, or you need a unique process. So if you have input but you don't have organized workforce, at least your process should be unique. You have organized workforce but you don't have input, at least your process should be unique to convert it into output, the ability to convert into output. Okay. So if you have either one of them, it's a business. If you don't have any of them, it is not a business. It is not a business. Okay. Okay. Anyone having any doubt till this particular point, please let me know. So coming up to this particular example number 3, we had this single identified houses, single identified homes. Then we had this corporate building as well. So we know we have input. We know we have input and we have output. Output is leasing service. Leasing service is output over here. And we have input. But if you see, we don't have organized workforce, right? The process is performed from outsourced cleaning and security, ancillary or minor within the context of process required to create output. So the workforce that is available is very minor, readily available in the market. It is not unique. It is not scarce. What it means to say, we have input buildings, we have output leasing. So output exists. We have input, but we don't have organized workforce. Okay. Is our process that we are applying scarce or unique? No, there are lots of buildings around which can be rented out or leased out. You're not providing something that is unique or something that is scarce. So it is not a business. It is not a business. You are not purchasing the business. First, it did not satisfy the concentration test. Second, we check that do you have output? Yes, we have output. We are leasing out. Leasing service is the output. So if I have the output, I have to check what is the input that is available. So input over here is building. Do I have organized workforce? No, I don't have organized workforce. It did not satisfy the first test. Second one, do I have unique process? No, I don't have anything unique in this. We are just leasing out. We are just in the leasing business. Nothing unique about it. Okay. So we are not purchasing business. What we have purchased is buildings. What we have purchased over here is building. Those buildings should not be accounted as per India's 103. They should be accounted as per Indian Accounting Standard 40. I hope it is clear. I hope it is clear. Anyone having any particular doubt till this particular point? So they came up with the next one. It says, let's see, same as example 3. Example 3, we have this single identified homes, single family homes. We have these corporate offices, except that the acquired set of activities and assets includes employees. We have employees now who are responsible for leasing. The employees are trained to provide this lease service, tenant management service, managing and supervising the operational processes. Okay, so we have organized workforce. Now we have organized workforce. They are expert in leasing. They know how to manage the tenants. They know how to supervise the acts and operational processes as well. So we have input, which is building. We have organized workforce. So we can see that we have input, we have organized workforce. Hence, this is business. Output exists, leasing service. Output exists. Okay. So this was the first step. What if I don't have output? We have just started the business. The output was yet to be manufactured. Okay, we have just started the business. Let's say opening a new restaurant. The opening ceremony is yet to take place and another entity comes and says, sell your restaurant to us. So output does not exist. So if the output does not exist, what the standard wants you to say is, you should have organized workforce and a critical process. Your process should be unique and you should have organized workforce. Okay, so if you have organized workforce and your process is critical, it is unique to convert into output, having ability of converting input into output, applying this critical process. Ability to convert input into output, applying this critical process with the help of these organized workforce. Only one step, only one step. There are no two alternatives. There are no two alternatives. Then it is business, otherwise it is not a business. So you're not having output. You're not having output. But I have the building, I have land, I have plant and machinery, everything available. My workforce is well trained and they know how to convert these plant and machinery using how to use these plant and machinery, converting raw material into output. We know how to convert into input into output because our organized workforce, we have organized workforce, they are skilled. Okay, and obviously process is unique, it is not readily available in the market. If I want to change the process, it will cost substantially, or it will take a lot of time to change, or maybe a lot of efforts. Then definitely it constitutes a business. Definitely it constitutes a business, even if I am not having output. Even if I am not having output. So now let's try to see some examples. We have already seen some. We need to move ahead and look at some more examples. We are coming down to example number 5. Okay. Slowly and steadily, what it means to have output, what is critical process, will be clear with the help of lots of examples. We have to see around 11 to 12 examples. We are in example number 5 right now. Okay, let's see. Entity purchases a legal entity. What you are purchasing is a legal entity. Legal entity means it's a separate legal entity. Okay. It has in process research and development project. You're having in process research and development project with them, where research and development goes on to treat diabetes and is in final testing phase. Is in final testing phase. So you don't have output right now. It is clear output does not exist because we are on final testing phase, right? Do we have input? Maybe yes, we have the input. Do we have organized workforce? We will check that later. We will check that later whether we have organized workforce. Okay. But we know we don't have output. That is clear. We don't have output. That is clear. Project 1 includes historical know-how, formula, protocols, designs, procedures expected or needed to complete the final testing phase. We have the protocols. Okay. We have the designs. Do we have the critical process? Can I say it is the process? I will say, no, this is not a process. A lot of you will say, yes, sir, protocols, designs are considered to be process. No, they are not the process. Why they are not the process? Because what do I mean by process under Indian Accounting Standard 103 is, process is something that helps you into converting input into output with the help of organized workforce. Converting input into output with the help of organized workforce. Till the final testing is not complete, you cannot produce output. So you have the process, but this process is not capable of giving output. This process is only capable of completing research. This input is not capable of producing output. Okay, so critical process is missing over here. Let's move ahead. Contract provides outsourced clinical trials. The trials of this particular medicine has been outsourced. Contract is priced at current market rate and number of vendors could do the same service. The same service of this outsourcing can be done by any person. So it is not a special outsourced clinical trial. It can be done by anyone. These trials can be done by anyone. Okay. So this was not going to have any value. No one is going to pay something extra for this. No one is going to pay something extra for this. Therefore, the fair value associated with the contract is nil. Okay. The fair value will be 0 for this particular thing. Purchaser has no option to renew the contract, no employees, other asset process. So we don't have organized workforce. First, let's apply concentration test. First, let's apply the concentration test. What the person is basically paying over here is for this project 1 only. There is nothing else in this. This is just project 1. There is some outsourced contract which has a fair value 0. So we have not paid anything for this. Whatever you have paid is only for this process. There is just one research process, nothing else. You have paid for just one research process, nothing else, right? So there's some research that is going on and you are purchasing research rights. I will call it intangible asset. You are paying for research rights for diabetes medicine, intangible asset, right? So what you have paid is only for one asset. Substantially, whatever you are paying belongs only to this one asset. As per concentration test, you are purchasing an asset. You are paid substantially for an asset. This is not a business. It fails the concentration test, right? Sorry, it passes the concentration test. It passes the concentration test. This is not a business. This is not a business. Okay. Anyone? Any doubts? Now it says in the second part, same as example 5, there is another research and development project for Alzheimer disease. Okay, so now you have two rights. One is diabetes and one is Alzheimer. Okay, so this project 2. Historical know-how formula protocols, same as earlier one. Okay, fair value is similar to that of project 1. So suppose this has a fair value of 200 crore, even Alzheimer project has a fair value of 200 crore. So I don't have a single identified asset. Okay, there are two identified assets having same value. This is not a single identified asset. 200 crore, 200 crore. Okay, there are two different assets over here. So I will say that this is not substantially what I have paid is for a single identified asset. Concentration test fails. Concentration test fails. So now next step, is there output? Is there an output? No, we are on research phase. There is no output. So if there's no output, what we need is input, organized workforce, critical process. Critical process. We don't have the process. I proved it with example 5. You don't have the process of converting input into output. The process is missing. The process element is missing over here. So you are having input, you don't have employees, you don't have organized workforce. So there's no organized workforce. One thing missing. Two, you don't have critical process as well. That is missing. So you are not purchasing business. This is not purchasing business. So now we can see we are having two tests to check whether it is business or not. One is concentration test, which is the amendment. Okay. And second is this output, output exists or no output exists test. So first test, we always check concentration test. After that, what we are checking is this output exists, not output exists test. So this is not a business. Coming down to example 7, you have purchased a legal entity. Entities into biotechnology operations, where research and development activities on several drug compounds that it is developing. It is developing. It is not researching, it is developing. Okay. So you have in-house research development projects related to the same. Senior management scientists who have the necessary skills, knowledge, experience to perform the research and development is there. So you have organized workforce. You have organized workforce, tangible assets, corporate headquarters, research lab, lab equipment. I can say I have input. I have input. Entity does not have marketable product. Output does not exist. Output does not exist and has not generated any revenue till now. But are we into clinical trials? Are we into clinical trials? No, it is saying we are already developing products. So we have a process. We have this process because we are developing the product. And obviously this process has the capability of producing output, right? We are not selling the output till now, but obviously this process will be having the capability of producing output. So we have input, machineries, we have organized workforce, and we have a critical process, right? We have researched for it. We are developing the medicines related to the same. So we have a critical process over here. So we have the critical process, input, output, which has the capability of being converted into output. So output does not exist, but yes, there is a unique process and we have organized workforce. Okay. So in this particular case, we will say that business, in this particular case, we can say that yes, business exists. This is a business. What we are purchasing is a business. Okay. Moving ahead, anyone having any doubt, you may ask the same. So coming down, example 8, you have purchased broadcasting asset. So maybe satellite through which you can broadcast various channels, movies or something like that from another entity. So what have you purchased? There are assets which include only communication license. So basically the other person had communication license. Let's say you are purchasing radio channel license from this Radio Mirchi station. Okay. So they have the communication license. They have the broadcasting equipment. They have office building. So we have input. We have the input. Each of the asset acquired has same fair value. All the assets have same fair value. So the fair value of communication license is equal to the fair value of the broadcasting equipment is equal to the fair value of the office building. Okay. So we have three identified assets. We don't have single identified assets. We have three identified assets. So there is no concentration test is failed, right? Concentration test is failed. We have not invested in a single identified asset. We have not invested in a single identified asset, right? So concentration test fails over here. Now we have to see whether output exists or not. Purchaser does not purchase the process needed. So process is missing. Okay, does not acquire employees, organized workforce is missing. Before acquisition had stopped the broadcasting. That means output is missing. Output is not there, organized workforce is not there. So what you have purchased is this particular communication license, which is intangible asset, equipments, broadcasting equipment, tangible asset, Ind AS 16, office building, Ind AS 16. I hope it is clear. So we don't apply Ind AS 103 because you are not acquiring the business over here. Moving ahead, example 9, you have purchased a closed manufacturing facility. We don't have output. Closed manufacturing facility, we don't have output. Land and building as well as related equipment. Land and building plus related equipment. So we have input. We have the input that is available. To comply with local laws, purchaser must take over the employees who worked in the facility. Employees who worked in the facility. So we have organized workforce. You have to take over the employees. No other asset, process, or activities are transferred. Nothing else is transferred. The acquired set of activities and assets stopped producing output before acquisition date. So before acquisition date, the production had already stopped. We have land and building related equipment. Output does not exist. We have purchased even organized workforce. What it says is there is no other asset. There is no process or other asset activities that are transferred. No other process or anything has been transferred. So does it constitute a business? Because we have employees, we have land and building as well. So if output does not exist, we need a critical process as well. Okay. So over here, critical, firstly, concentration test fails. Concentration test does not pass over here. Okay. What they, same thing, since there is no process, we don't consider it to be a business. There is no process, right? There's no process. When there's no output, we need organized workforce and a critical process. There is no critical process. So over here, this is not a business. Example 10, entity purchases another entity with exclusive sub-license to distribute product X. Exclusive sub-license. Now you have license for selling this particular product X. You have the right that you can sell this particular product X in a specified area, let's say India. Let's say whole of India. Seller has the license to distribute X worldwide. The one who has sold has the right to sell this product worldwide, and he has given you license to sell in India. So we have this particular input, right? Intangible asset. As a part of transaction, also purchases existing customer contracts. Existing customer contracts are also purchased in the jurisdiction and takes over supply contract to purchase product X from the producer at market rate. Okay. None of the identified assets acquired have a fair value which constitutes substantially all of the fair value of the gross asset acquired. None of the assets substantially make up for the gross value paid. So it fails the concentration test. What it says, it fails the concentration test. No other employees, other process, distribution capabilities, and other things are transferred. So I believe there is just license, there is input, there is no organized workforce, right? So I can say that this is not a business. This is not a business. Okay. No substantive process meet the criteria. Not a business. Okay. Moving ahead, next example, example 11. Anyone having any doubt, any queries may raise the same. Assume same facts except that purchaser purchases worldwide right of product X, including all intellectual properties. There are activities, assets, all customer contract, customer relationship, finished goods, marketing material, customer incentive program, raw material supply contract, specialized equipments, everything is purchased. Okay. No employees, other assets, other processes, or other activities are transferred. None of the identified assets acquired has a fair value which constitutes substantially everything. But what I can see is a unique process over here comparatively. Okay. So when output exists, we have to see organized workforce plus input or a unique process. I can see there is a unique process over here comparatively. Okay. So this does constitute a business. This does constitute a business. Okay. Moving at example 12. You have purchased loan portfolios. Loan portfolios. So let's say purchasing a mutual fund entity, like purchasing a mutual fund entity having some loan portfolios who had distributed loan to other people or securitization vehicle. It has residential mortgage loans. Residential mortgage loans. So they have given loan to these residential houses and you are purchasing those rights of recovery of these loans. Okay. They have same size, risk rating, which is not significantly different. So I can see there are similar identified assets. Similar identified assets. Okay, there are no employees, no other assets. What I feel is substantially what you have paid is for these similar identified assets. We are going to consider it as passing concentration test. This is not a business. passing the concentration test. So I hope it is clear. This is just to give you an idea. There are more examples. You can even go through example number 13 and there is example number 14 talking about similar aspects. Okay. This is what was the definition amendment in Indian Accounting Standard 103. How do you identify whether it is a business or not? How do you identify whether it's a business or not? So we are open for doubt session if you have any. You may raise the doubts if you have any. Which sectors or types of business organized are the main reasons for introduction of such test for Indian Accounting Standard 103? These are for all types of sectors. Initially, it was a bit difficult comparatively to identify. Earlier, it just used to say the definition, whether it is input, you have process. If it is capable of producing output, it is always a business. It is always a business. But now we are concentrating a lot on process comparatively. Okay. So earlier, it was just a general guideline. Now they have made it more precise. So it is not particular sector. It is widely covered. What basically now definition has tried to cover is financial portfolios as well. Earlier, financial portfolios were not covered in the definition of India's 103, which led to a loophole. Earlier, banks and financial institutes used to say India's 103 is not applicable to them or IFRS 3 is not applicable. So that is why the definition was amended to cover even financial organizations. Okay. Yes. Anything else? Anyone having anything else?
If you guys have any doubts, please put it in the chat box.
Yes, I'll be sharing these slides with CA Club India. They'll be available to you. They'll be made available to you.
So for the slides,
whosoever has registered over here will definitely get these slides. I'll share the slides immediately after this webinar with CA Club India.
So we'll also put the link of the slide in the YouTube videos description box, and all those who registered for Zoom will get an email as well.
So can we end this session?
Right. So I don't think there are any more questions. So thank you so much, Sumit sir, for the incredible session, and thank you to all the participants as well. So I will be ending the session now. Thank you.